Oh, it looks to be 8:30. We'll begin the meeting in 1 minute. That's okay with everyone. Mr. Chairman, is that okay?
Works for me.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Planning Stakeholders Relations Committee meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is a roll call. Jessica?
Here.
Ann?
Here.
Stephanie?
Here.
Thank you. Are there other board members who would like to identify themselves?
Austin Davis is here.
Michelle Svianic.
Lori Mizgorski.
John Jerry DeLonzon.
Jerry. All right, and thank you, everyone. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the March 17th meeting minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, seeing no corrections, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Okay, thank you, guys. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes approved. The first item on the agenda is the downtown Uptown Oakland Bus Rapid Transit Project update. David, are you on?
I am. Good morning, Chair Teague and members of the Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee and other board members in attendance. I'm David Huffaker. I'm the Chief Development Officer, and you're going to be hearing from Mike Cetra later, right after me, our Chief Legal Officer, with a couple agreements. And I wanted to provide some context for why these agreements are so important for the BRT project, and give you just a brief update on the status of the project. So current status, we are, you'll recall last year we were in an FTA review with our project management oversight consultant. And as a result of that, last spring and summer, we have been working with our project partners on the addressing some of the risk items that they had identified, and working on finalizing those. And then just this month, we got together with our project management oversight team once again with FTA staff and have reviewed those strategies with them. And I think we're in a good place with the project, and I'll talk about that a little bit as far as some of our next steps. But these two agreements that you're going to be seeing today are actually key risk mitigation factors and actually milestones in the advancement of the BRT project. Two of the items that had been of concern to the FTA and the project management oversight team were the utility management and our coordination with project partners. And so the first agreement, the cooperation agreement between the City of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, the URA, and the Port Authority is actually an update of previous cooperation agreements, but this has now nailed down some of the process items that were left outstanding and some of the other decisions that needed to be made, clarifies roles and responsibilities, clarifies a path for permitting of the project and how the partners will work together, and then once the project is in construction, how those activities will be coordinated among all the parties. And so this agreement is actually an excellent example of the cooperation and mutual interests of this project. And so we're excited to carry that one forward. I don't have the resolution here. That'll be for Mike Cetra to talk about. But then the second one is one of the risk elements and continues to be a risk element is the utility coordination throughout the corridor. I think I've said this previously, but the downtown, Uptown, and Oakland areas are have a lot of history. There's a lot of unknowns under the surface. And so our work with the partners at our utility companies, both private companies and public agencies, is very important. And probably the major player in terms of utilities in the corridor is the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. So we have a first of what we anticipate to be 2 cooperation agreements with PWSA for advancing their work in the corridor and making sure that we're coordinated on that. So these 2 elements, agreements, are going to be very important in mitigating some of the risks that have been identified and allowing the project to move forward. So we're very excited to have those coming to the board this month. Now, let's see if I can advance the slides here. Jeff, can you help? There we go. Thank you. So as far as the next steps, once we've executed these agreements this month, then we will that will be a key step in enabling us to complete the FTA review. We're nailing down a few other items in terms of project cost, and we're going to be contributing in our FY23 capital budget an amount sufficient to cover the project cost, along with the anticipated federal share and other project partner contributions. We also are due for a round of public outreach. We had an extensive series of meetings last year. Now, as we've worked on refining the project, we will be going back out for another round of outreach through all the impacted communities and project partners and everyone who's impacted by this project, to give them an update. And again, we also are working on a communications plan for when the construction is actually happening in people's neighborhoods, to give them adequate notice of when things are going to be happening, how long they'll be happening, and what some of the immediate impacts are in those neighborhoods. So that is in development still. We'll be finishing design based on some of these changes. And then anticipated later this year to execute the Small Starts Grant with the FTA. And that would be the signal that we could actually begin work on the project. So at that point, we would anticipate taking our first construction project or construction contract to the board for approval. And hopefully construction begins as soon as possible, but we do anticipate that will be in FY23. So that's just kind of a high level overview. I wanted to provide some context for the agreements that Mike will be talking to you about here in just a minute, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have at this point.
It's John. Are there, during the public comment period, there were a lot of comments. Were there changes made to the project as a result of that? Do you know? And maybe I'm putting you on the spot. I don't mean to, but I wonder if you knew of any changes that were made because of the public input.
We have been working with the public and learning more about what the comments are. I can't speak to any specific comments and what the resolution would be on those, but certainly that public comment, as well as comments from project partners, from the utilities, from the city of Pittsburgh, from the county, and neighborhood stakeholders has all been taken into account as we've refined the design.
Right, because the project is not quite the same as it was originally designed. That was the point I was making. There have already been some changes made to it. So I was curious about whether we knew if any of those were made. Are there any questions of committee members? Other board members?
Go
ahead.
I just have the Port Authority do such a fine job in public engagement and engaging our communities on all levels. But what I find is some of our partners is not as robust as we are getting out in front of the message. And we're doing so many great things, it gets stepped on by other things. So my question is, our partners, especially as it relates to construction in downtown, are we encouraging the city and the URA and some of the other partners, stakeholders downtown, to not only notify us of when things are going on, but amp up their engagement as well and get in front of the message because they end up putting it back on us. I've
Sure.
talked to a lot of businesses that they said, from time and again, that all we have to do, the city won. All we
Yeah.
have to do is notify Port Authority.
Right.
But we engaged so well if they're not notifying us to get in front of some of the messages. How are we coordinating that message with?
Great. That's a great question. And so those project partners, the city and the county and URA do participate in our weekly or our regular project management meetings to coordinate some of those communication aspects. And actually, frankly, the agreements that we have also help define some of those roles. But it is a very complex project operating throughout many parts of the city, and there is development happening as we speak that impacts the project, and the project impacts that development. So it's a ongoing process for managing that communication. But we do coordinate with the PDP as far as downtown activities, also with and actually that group has convened a group of partners with projects in the Uptown and involving PennDOT as well, because there are projects happening on bridges coming into downtown that are also critical. So I wish it was a perfect, seamless communication process, but there is so much work happening, particularly in Uptown. To coordinate that messaging is a challenge, but we do think we're doing the best job we can to coordinate that messaging, make sure it's coming with a single voice and single purpose so that people understand why things are happening.
Yep. And I think we do a great job in engaging. So, I think others have to play their role as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Stephanie. Any other questions of board members? Seeing no questions, or any stakeholder questions? Any stakeholders on the call that have a question? Okay, well, thank you very much, David, for the presentation and for the update. Next items you're welcome. Resolutions, and I think Mike Setter is going to present the first resolution. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Committee Chairman. As you heard from David, this first resolution I have for the committee's consideration this morning would authorize Port Authority to enter into an amended cooperation agreement with the City of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and the Urban Redevelopment Authority for construction and operation of the BRT project. As members may recall, in August of 2019, the parties entered into the original cooperation agreement to advance the planning and final design stages of the BRT project. And Ms. Turman, to your question, that original agreement did include a steering committee. So we had representatives from each government agency to have an interagency cooperative relationship to advance, engage in public comment, et cetera, for the project. In addition, the 2019 agreement, understanding obviously with this project is a complex project and crosses a lot of different government agency rights of way, et cetera. The 2019 agreement contemplated future amendments being made to the agreement to address construction and operational matters that needed to be fleshed out in the planning and final design phases. As you heard from David's update this morning, the project is nearing final design. It's under FTA project readiness review, and construction is tentatively scheduled to begin in Port Authority fiscal year 2023. With all of those efforts in mind, over the past several months, the parties and their respective legal counsel have been negotiating and have now finalized the proposed terms and conditions of an amended cooperation agreement. The proposed amended cooperation agreement is attached as Exhibit A to the resolution. I apologize, it did make your packets a little bit thicker this morning. But briefly, if you dig into it, you'll see it addresses critical construction and operational matters, including construction rights of entry, permits and approvals, bidding of construction, how that will be coordinated, particularly between Port Authority and the city for the BRT project, traffic signalization upgrade for operation, and then various exhibits are attached to the agreement for the forms of the permanent rights of way and related property interests that are necessary, such as temporary construction easements to complete the project. And then, of course, post-construction, BRT ownership and maintenance and future use of the city's rights of way for operation of the BRT service once it's placed into revenue service. I would note the city via February 2022 City Council vote The county in April and earlier in April and URA in March have all approved the proposed amended cooperation agreement. So subject to this committee's recommendation, our board's approval, this resolution would authorize Port Authority to move ahead with final execution of this agreement, which, as David mentioned earlier with the FTA project readiness review, this is one of the critical agreements FTA is looking to see that we have advanced and executed as part of that effort. So subject to any further member questions, I'd respectfully request that the committee recommend this resolution to the full board for approval.
Thank you, Mike. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Are there any questions of committee members? Other board members? Stakeholders?
Hey, John, I just want to note that I'm on the call, though. This is Jen Liptak. Thank you.
Oh, welcome, Jen. Okay, seeing that there are no questions and there's a motion, do I have a motion of the committee to forward it on to the full board for approval? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. You're up again, Mike.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Committee Chairman. Continuing with the BRT theme, this second resolution I have for the committee's consideration would authorize Port Authority to enter into a cooperation agreement with the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority in order to proceed with construction in the downtown Pittsburgh corridor, which is where the initial construction will be focused when it begins. Port Authority requires the relocation of certain water lines and related facilities operated and maintained by PWSA. Port Authority and PWSA representatives have negotiated a proposed cooperation agreement for this downtown BRT project work that would address critical issues such as design responsibility and coordination for the relocation, responsibility for the actual excavation and relocation work, protocol for any lead water lines that may be discovered during excavation, and again, similar to the amended cooperation agreement with the other government agency partners, and you'll see this in Exhibit A to the resolution. There's an exhibit for the easements and rights of way for the necessary completion of the work and other language regarding how that will be coordinated. So again, similar to the prior resolution, subject to any member questions, I'd respectfully request that the Planning Committee recommend this resolution authorizing Port Authority to enter into this downtown BRT project work cooperation agreement with the PWSA to the full board for approval.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions of committee members? Any questions of other board members? Any questions of stakeholders? Okay, seeing no questions, I need a vote on all in favor of forwarding the resolution on to the full board for approval. Say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, and thank you very much, Mike, for your
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
For your succinct presentation. The next item is the authorization to adopt Port Authority of Allegheny County 2022 to 2024 Title VI program. Now, Amy apparently is off sick, so I guess Ellie Newman is going to present. Ellie, are you there?
Ellie?
Yes, I'm on. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, so my name's Ellie Newman. I'm the section manager of service development, and I'll be presenting our Title VI overview for this new reporting period. So Title VI is a federal program that's mandated by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And basically it ensures that we as a government agency treat everyone equally and don't discriminate on any of our riders based on their race, color, or national origin. And every 3 years, we sort of monitor this on an ongoing basis, but every 3 years we do a much more thorough review, and we also combine everything that we've done in 3 years and then have this presented to the board for review, approval, and authorization. So as John said, this is the reporting period of 2019 through 2021 calendar years. So there's a lot of substance to this. It's over 500 pages. So I'll just kind of touch on some of the main highlights of the document. So one of the sections refers to the public participation plan, which kind of governs how we communicate with our riders. We have a major section on service standards. So we look at how all of our routes performed and make sure that they perform equitably across different communities and different groups that they serve. We also do a review of our rider demographics and travel patterns using surveys and census data, sort of combining those two tools. We also summarize any of our major changes that we've done. So anything that was a greater than 30% hours or miles change is reviewed, as well as any fare changes that may have been implemented. And then finally, we look at our Title VI complaints and investigations. So as far as languages, this is a pie chart just showing what the primary language breakdown of Allegheny County residents is. And we still have a very English-only dominated population in the county. So basically what we're looking for here is, do we have over 5% of Allegheny County residents that their primary language is not English? And if it was that case, then we would need to translate all of our materials into that language. So it's 5% or 1,000 people total. We've never hit that. We didn't hit that with this census, but that is something that we continue to look at. And we do translate many of our documents into Spanish, as well as have translation options available at customer service. The next section that we do is we sort of categorize our routes based on whether they serve minority populations as well as low-income populations. So if a third of a route goes through an area that has a higher population of minority residents, then we consider that to be a minority route. And so that route will get sort of special consideration if there are cuts that we need to make. We want to steer away from making cuts to those routes. So the green routes here are highlighting which routes those are. And similar for the low-income routes, so we're looking at routes that serve low-income areas and sort of making sure that we can provide as best service as possible to those areas. So this probably is not legible, but basically we go through various different metrics and split out our routes based on, are they minority, are they low income, are they not? And then we look at every single metric to see, are we providing equitable service? So some of these are crowding, headways or frequencies. We look at out of service rates, canceled trips. And then we also look at sort of more policy level things. So we'll look at which transit stops provide shelters. Can we make sure that most of our minority routes, at least have equal amounts of shelter stops as non-minority routes? Same with where you can purchase fares, where you can access paper schedules and park and rides. So with this analysis, we didn't find anything that was disparate. We did notice, and this is something we've brought up before, that the pandemic impacts have kind of skewed us a little bit on crowding. So we found that since before COVID, our routes of non-minority and minority were almost exactly equal in terms of crowded percent. And then since COVID happened, because we've lost a lot of our commute riders, we've kind of shifted in the other direction. So that's something that we are actively monitoring, but it's not anything that has caused any disparate impact at this point. So for fare equity, we did put a major change in our fare policy out in January 1st of 2022, which technically is outside our period, but we did do our analysis of Title VI impacts in 2021. We didn't find any disparate impacts for that analysis, though. Then major changes, these are anything, as I said before, that has more than a 30% addition or subtraction to service. We do a special analysis of that. Most of our major changes, I think 20 of them, 20 of them were additions. So most of that was weekend service. So adding Saturday and or Sunday service to routes that didn't have it before. And then we also had some major reductions in our commute routes, and that was due to the huge decline in commute ridership. In some cases, 80 or 90% fewer riders just didn't justify the same level of service. So we did find that 5 of those reductions had a disparate impact or burden. So this is something that we're actively looking at and hoping to be able to bring back service as our operator levels recover. So I believe this is the final one. So Title VI complaints and investigations. We did receive about 230 complaints, mostly regarded to race, and those were all investigated and closed out. And I believe that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Just had a clarification on the dates, because what I was looking at, the resolution has 2022 to 2024, but then you mentioned different dates. So I wanted to get a clarification on that. Can you, Ellie, can you clarify that?
Sure. So the review is from the 2019 to 2021 period, but then we also have policies that will now become in effect for our new period. So I think that's what that refers to.
Yeah, and the new fare, our new fare structure, that was part of it. I just wanted to clarify that too. That was part of the review or not?
Yes, yes. So since we did our analysis and all of our public engagement during our current fare period, we did include that in this report, although it didn't actually become active until one day after the reporting period ended.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution? Sorry, resolution.
Can I ask a question first? This is
So
Jessica.
hold on 1 second. Let me say, what I'm going to do is I probably stepped out of it a little bit, so, but go ahead, ask your question, Lori.
This is Jessica. Yes, I saw
Jessica,
that
sorry.
it showed that Chinese was the largest language spoken other than English. Yes. Yes, thank you. And you said that materials were translated into Spanish, but not Chinese. Is there any plan to translate materials into Chinese?
Yeah, maybe Jim could speak to that if he's still around. Thank you.
Good morning, Jim.
Morning. Right now, we don't have any specific plans to do that, but what we've worked with this group in this process quite a bit over time to try and identify opportunities when we can translate something in a meaningful way. The last time I remember we did something very specific with Spanish. We printed materials in Spanish and had direct mailings to the Beachview community during our rail project in Beachview, and that was a very specific example. So we weren't at the level yet where statistically we had to do it, but we felt it was meaningful and something that we could do. And so we'll continue looking for those opportunities with those communities. There's other smaller communities, populations that are non-English speaking throughout the city and county that we're aware of. We work quite a bit with the city on monitoring some of those groups, and we are looking for opportunities to work with them and educate those communities in those languages about public transit and how to ride the system. So we'll continue to do that, but right now we don't have anything active on that front.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Sorry, Jessica. So what I'd like is, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Okay, we have a second. Any additional discussion by committee members? Other board members? Do I have a question of any stakeholder groups?
I do. This is Laura.
Okay, Laura, go ahead.
So just a couple of questions. When you're assessing minority or low-income routes, are you looking at proximity to like residences? Because yeah,
Yeah, so the way that we do our minority and low-income routes is we are looking at where the stops of the route actually are. So if the route goes on the busway but doesn't stop in a community, then we wouldn't consider the demographics of that. So we look at, here's your route, here's all the stops, and then the census block group demographics that kind of fit around those stops is what we use to determine whether a route is minority or low income.
One of the concerns that I would have around that then is just that it doesn't take into consideration the destinations that necessarily people are going to, right? Because if there are changes to a route where it's not designated a low income or a minority route, like if service frequency or service span is reduced, but it's a key commercial district, for instance, where there's a lot of service jobs, that could affect a lot of minority or low income people, even if there's not a lot of low income people that live around it. Is that right?
It could happen. I think that, we obviously have a deep knowledge of our routes, and we know based on the ridership how productive routes are and how needed they are. So we can do things like look at if a route, for example, has really high midday ridership or Saturday or weekend ridership. That's kind of a key to us, that these are people that, maybe they don't fit into the low-income minority box, but these are people that are more transit dependent. So there's a lot of things that go into our service planning that aren't just kind of checking the box of what the FTA requires, but are kind of more our own policies to make sure that we're not discriminating against riders and providing the best service that we can.
Okay, thank you. And I just, one other question around fares, just in terms of the Title VI analysis, it looks at whether or not the fare changes will have a disproportionate harm or impact on protected classes, and not whether or not as a whole there will be harm borne by that class. Is that right? Like, it's just whether it's relative to other, like, wealth, relative to wealthier communities or whiter communities and so on, right?
Yeah, I think I understand your question. So basically, we're just looking at, does the change by itself have a disproportionate impact or burden that would be borne by minority or low-income populations?
That's greater than the harm or impact that would be borne by other non-protected classes. Is that right?
Sorry, could you restate that?
Sorry, it's mostly just comparing the impact we saw with some of these fare changes that in aggregate, like more black self-identified Black riders would have to pay more in fares, even though, but it didn't, even though it didn't raise any flags with the Title VI analysis, because that impact was still smaller than the impact that would be borne by non-Black or white or Caucasian communities. Is that right? Does that make sense what I'm asking? It's like by comparison, not that with other communities as opposed to within that demographic.
Correct. Yeah. So we're basically trying to see, kind of compare the riders that may be impacted or not impacted. Looks like Catherine wants to take this one.
Good morning. So the question is, on a Title VI analysis, is it looking at impact amongst groups or impact in general? And that your supposition is correct. The impact is are protected classes being more significantly harmed or harmed at all. What we found with our analysis on the fare changes, and look out, make sure I'm getting corrected if I'm wrong, was that our low income and minority passengers actually would pay a fare that was a few cents lower, and non-minority and non-low income fare groups would pay a fare that was a few cents higher. So in that analysis, we saw that there was a benefit, but you are correct. On Title VI, it's to make sure that a group is not being impacted more than another. We have clearly other factors, from public input to good advocacy to outreach across communities, to ensure that we are not putting out a fare change that just impacts somebody.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And just quickly, just to say that we hope that the language, we know that the Spanish speaking community in particular has been requesting that there be real-time information around the service outages being shared on Twitter and stuff like that in Spanish. So recognizing that it doesn't meet the federal obligation to have translation, we hope that that will happen nonetheless.
Thank you, Laura, for your questions, and thank you, Ellie and Catherine, for your responses. Now what I'd like to do is to ask for a vote on the authorization to forward the resolution onto the full board for approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion will be forwarded onto the full board. The next item on the agenda is the adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, meeting stays is in adjournment until next month. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you, Mike and Ellie, for your presentations, as well as yours, David. Thank you. Have a good day, guys. Bye.
All right, we'll take just a second to get organized for the Finance Committee. All right, I'll call to order the Finance Committee for April 19th, 2022.
The system has detected that a few lines are still connected to the conference and will attempt to disconnect them. If you wish to.
Before we get started with the agenda, I'd like to take roll call, starting with members of the committee. Board Member Liptak.
Here.
Representative Davis.
Here, I'm here.
Board Member DeLon.
Here.
And for any other board members that are on the line with us today or here in person, could you identify yourselves by name?
Jeff Letwin.
Stephanie Kerman.
Lori Mizgorski.
Michelle Smianik.
John Tagg.
Jessica Walsaville.
Thank you. Okay, our first agenda item is approval of minutes of the March 17th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting. Do I have any questions or revisions to those meeting minutes? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay, we have one resolution to consider today, and that's authorization to enter into third amendment to funding agreement with the Stadium Authority of the City of Pittsburgh. Mike.
Good morning again, Madam Committee Chairwoman and committee members. This resolution would authorize Port Authority to enter into a third amendment with the Stadium Authority to extend the party's existing agreement for free fares at the North Side T Station. Port Authority and the Stadium Authority originally entered into the funding agreement for Northside Station for a period of 5 years from April 1st, 2015 through March 31st, 2020. On November 1st, 2019, the parties extended that agreement one additional year through March 31st, 2021. As that first extension year was, as that year went through, obviously the pandemic emerged, started having an effect on parking utilization at the Stadium Authority's North Shore lots and garages, which funds this agreement. So when the parties ultimately in April of 2021 entered into a second amendment to extend the funding agreement through March of this year, we did include some language that temporarily halted the Stadium Authority's funding obligation until they met a triggering mechanism for lot utilization. For that extension year, it was 90%. Overall average daily utilization at those lots in garages for at least 3 consecutive months. In the interim, that agreement recognized that Port Authority had received CARES Act and other federal stimulus funding, which with this agreement in place, we were able to reimburse that revenue to the authority's budget. With the pandemic persisting through the remainder of 2021 and initial portion of 2022, parking utilization at the lots, it's starting to see a bit of uptick here over the last couple months, and hopefully that will continue this year, the next several months here with the weather improving and special events, et cetera. But the parties did negotiate, and what's before the committee this morning is a proposed agreement to extend the funding agreement 2 additional years from April 1st, 2022 through March 31st, 2024 for a total funding amount each year of $265,000. It would continue to include a triggering mechanism for the first extension year, 85% utilization for 3 months. For the second year, it would drop to 80%. And again, unless and until those mechanisms are met, Port Authority would still have the ability to utilize federal stimulus funding to reimburse the revenue to its operating budget. So with that being said, and subject to any member questions, I'd respectfully request that the committee recommend this resolution to the full board for approval.
Thank you. Do I have any questions from committee members?
So Mike, Jerry DeLon, quick question on the thresholds. Historically, have those typically been met every month pre-COVID?
Yes, Mr. Long, great question. Pre-COVID, those lots were typically at near 100% and in some cases exceeding 100% capacity. Obviously, COVID has had a major impact on that. Dropped as low as 10% last year. This first quarter, we do get monthly occupancy reports, so myself and our finance division can track utilization against the agreement. Starting to see a recovery. As of their February report, they were at about 30% occupancy, average weekday utilization, and for special events, it's gone much better. They're at about 70% occupancy. So trending in the right direction. You know, fingers crossed that things continue to move forward and we continue to see vibrancy returning to the Golden Triangle.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions of the committee? Any questions of other board members? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve sending this for consideration of the board next week?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, our final agenda item is review of the March 2022 financial statements. Pete.
Hey, Pete.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Reviewing the March 2022 financial statements. So from a total operating income perspective, we continued to be below budget. We were $3.9 million below budget for the month of March. And once again, that is due to lower passenger revenues and also access shared ride revenues. That is about $70,000 higher than the February results in passenger revenue. It should be mentioned that the March financial statements do not show the financial impact of the 2-week free ride period. We are doing credits as we speak. So you will see the impact of that free ride period in the April financial statements. For the fiscal year, the total operating income continues to remain soft, and we're approximately $34.2 million below budget from a total operating income perspective. From a total expense and subsidy perspective for March of 22, we were $1.4 million below budget in total operating expenses. There were a couple of categories that did exceed budget. One was utilities. We had higher natural gas and data communication expenses for the month, as well as our other expenses exceeded budget due to timing related issues on software expense. Should be mentioned that both the utilities and the other expenses are below budget for the fiscal year. So it was more just a timing issue in those two categories. Total expense for the year does continue to trend well below budget. We're $35.2 million below budget. From a subsidy perspective, for the month, we were $9.2 million below budget, primarily due to lower ARPA invoicing versus plan. a fiscal year to date. Our total subsidies is 13.4 million below budget due to lower state operating assistance, vehicle overhaul invoicing, and then the aforementioned ARPA invoicing. Next slide, please. Thank you. From a year-over-year perspective, our total operating, oh, I'm sorry, could you go back? That's fine. Our total operating income does continue to exceed our fiscal 21 levels. Passenger revenues are approximately 52% higher than fiscal 21, so higher than fiscal 21, but still below pre-pandemic levels. Our access and advertising revenues are also significantly higher than last fiscal year. From a total expense perspective, we are $6.5 million above last year's expense levels due to higher wages and salaries, other expenses, and also access expenses. Subsidies are $5.1 million below last fiscal year. We've used less federal stimulus than last fiscal year. In addition, our preventive maintenance invoicing is less than last fiscal year. Operating reserves continue to be healthy. The authority began the month with $169 million in operating reserves. We had cash inflows of approximately $35 million, 17.3 million of that from state operating assistance. We had cash outflows of approximately $43 million related to salary, wages, benefits, supplies, and other services. So we ended the month of March with approximately $161 million in operating reserves. Can I answer any questions that any members may have?
Any questions of committee members? Any other questions from the board members? Okay, thanks, Pete.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
All right, that concludes our meeting for today. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Still move. Still move.
Second. Okay, meeting adjourned. We'll see you next month. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Smianik, and welcome to the Performance Oversight Committee. Just take a minute and gather your papers, and we'll get started in about 30 seconds.
Hey, Madam Chair, I'm going to have to jump off. I have another conflict, so please take me off. Sorry, I couldn't stay.
All right, thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Representative Davis. Have a good day. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome. We're going to call the meeting to order. Our first item of business this morning will be roll call. Representative Davis had to leave, and so Representative Mogorski, are you still on the phone with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lori. And any other board members that are with us this morning, please state your name.
Jeff Letwin.
Ann O'Gora.
Jen Liptak.
Ron Tagg.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you, everyone. Our first item of business this morning will be approval of our minutes of the March 17th meeting of the Performance Oversight Committee. And could I have a motion to, first of all, are there any corrections or additions to the meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second, all in favor, please state aye. Aye.
Aye.
Meeting minutes are approved. So we're moving on to item number 3 on our agenda, proposed resolutions. Good morning, Mr. Trona. How are you?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you. I have 2 items for your review and presentation to the full board for approval. The first is office supplies. This is going off a state schedule. Department of General Services awarded an office supply contract for the purchase of various office supplies WB Mason. The current contract is effective through April 14th of 2022 and permits one-year contract extensions. PADGS has exercised the first one-year contract extension. Port Authority seeks to continue the purchase of office supplies under the terms and conditions of the state schedule. Our recommendation is that the contract be awarded under the same terms and conditions as PA Department of General Services with WB Mason Company for the purchase of office supplies. This contract shall be in for an estimated total of $215,000 through April 14th of 2023. The exercise of all remaining option one-year extensions will be at the discretion of Port Authority and contingent on Pennsylvania Department of General Services exercising those extended options. This price represents a 1% decrease from our previous contracted price. Number 2, coach replacement parts for body. This bid was publicly advertised and our electronic documents were distributed. 3 firms accepted the invitation and 3 bids were received for these coach replacement parts used to maintain the authority's coach fleet over a 2-year period. So our recommendation that the contract be awarded to the low responsive bidder. Aftermarket parts, 6 items, estimated amount $70,668. Monthly reclaim and supply, 6 items, estimated amount $46,316. These prices represent a 2% increase from the previous contracted price for these items 2 years ago. That concludes my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Trona. Any of our committee members have questions? Any board members have questions for Mr. Trona on these items? Thank you, Mr. Trona.
You're welcome.
Can I have a motion to move this forward to the whole board?
So moved.
Second, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Thank you. Moving on to item B, under our resolutions, authorization to enter into an agreement with TransDev Services to provide professional services to coordinate paratransit service for individuals with disabilities and older adults in Allegheny County. Good morning, Darcy. How are you?
Good morning, Madam Chair and all in attendance. I am fine. How are you?
Welcome and thank you.
Thank you. I am Darcy Cleaver, Section Manager of Transit Amenities. Part of my oversight is also overseeing Port Authority's Access Shared Ride Advanced Reservation Paratransit Program. And this morning, I am seeking authorization to enter into an agreement with TransDev Services to coordinate paratransit service primarily for people with disabilities and older adults in Allegheny County. A request for proposal was advertised in November of 2021. In December of 2021, we did receive one proposal from TransDev. After receiving only one proposal, all other interested parties that had previously received the RFP or attended our information meetings were contacted to ascertain as to the reasoning for not submitting a proposal for this request for services. After multiple requests, no firms responded to this information. Therefore, our research was inconclusive. Therefore, we decided to move forward with resolicitation, not to proceed with resolicitation for this bid, and to proceed with TransDev. This is a 5-year contract with no options to extend. A total exceed of $2,447,400 for the first year, with each additional year being negotiated, reviewed, and adjusted through an agreement. Are there any questions?
I have none. Representative Magorski, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. Have you seen changes in the utilization through the pandemic?
Yes, we are still down at least 30 to 35% of our ridership. Okay. We've seen a little bit of an increase that has come back as people start to get out and about again, but we're still down about 30 or 35% of the ridership on the paratransit side.
Okay, and does that, if the lower ridership affect the cost here that we're proposing, or?
Part of it was taken into consideration. Yes, it definitely is. Well, what I should say is, let me clarify a little bit. This contract is actually for the administrative piece of the paratransit contract. It is not the operating budget.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board members have questions for Ms. Cleaver? Hearing none. Could I have a motion to move this forward to the full board?
So moved.
Second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you very much, Darcy.
Thank you.
Moving on to item C, authorization to enter agreements with a pool of firms for inspection and engineering services. Mr. Greg O'Hare. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good morning. So this resolution seeks authorization to enter into agreements with a pool of firms for inspection and engineering services. The scope of services is inspection and engineering services. It includes a bridge and tunnel inspection program, support of the authority's capital program, as well as development of construction bid documents for projects such as bridges, tunnels, radio towers, retaining walls, and other transit infrastructure. RFP 2111 was advertised in January 13th, 2022, with 6 proposals received for 2 professional service categories. For the service category for inspection and engineering for repairs, the highest rated firm was GAI Consultants, second TRC Engineers Incorporated, third highest Michael Baker International Incorporated. For the service category for engineering for rehabilitation and replacement, the highest rated was GAI Consultants Incorporated, second highest TRC Engineers Incorporated, third highest Michael Baker International Incorporated, rounding out the pool of firms. The contract is for a 4-year term with 1 option year, with a total not to exceed amount for the pool of firms of $22 million. With that, pending any questions, respectfully request the committee to move the resolution to the full board for consideration.
Thank you. Representative Migorski, do you have any questions for Mr. O'Hare?
No, thank you.
I have none. Any other board members have questions? Hearing no questions, could I have a motion to move this forward to the full board?
So moved.
Second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries to the full board. Thank you, Mr. O'Hare.
Thank you.
I have no other business for the Performance Oversight Committee this morning, and so I'm making a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We stand in adjournment until next month, and then continuing on with the rest of our agenda today with Technology Committee. Thank you, everyone.
John.
Okay, we're going to move on to the Technology Committee if everyone is ready. I believe I'll just do a quick roll. I myself as chair am here. Lord Representative Limsgorski, you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
And will the other board members please identify themselves for the record?
Jeff Litwin.
Anna Borick.
Michelle Spianik.
John Tagg.
Okay, thank you, committee members and board members. The first item of business will be the approval of the minutes from the March 17th, 2022 meeting. If there are no corrections, I'll ask for a motion for approval.
So moved.
And a second. I'll second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have an awarding of the bids, and I believe, who's going to do that? Tony, you going to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I have one item for your review and presentation to the full board for approval. The first is NRV Equipment March Network cameras. This bid was publicly advertised and our electronic documents were distributed. One firm accepted our invitation. One bid was received for the purchase of network video recorders and equipment that is used to maintain video surveillance on the authority's coach fleet. So our recommendation that a contract be awarded to March Networks an estimated amount of $960,000. There has been no recent purchase of this item. However, the staff has determined the pricing to be fair and reasonable. As consistent, when we have one bid, we do a single bid survey, and that revealed that March Networks is the actual manufacturer of the equipment, and through their distribution, they have the ability to bid on larger projects as well. So anybody else participating would have to purchase the items from March Networks. Thus, they would not be competitive on this particular low bid situation. Any questions?
Thank you,
None
Tony.
at this time. No,
I
thank
don't
you.
have any questions. Any other board members have any questions?
No, I
Okay,
do not.
Okay, all right, seeing none, I will ask for a motion for approval,
So moved.
and I will second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much, Tony. We appreciate it.
Thank
The
you.
next item we have is a presentation, which is the role of video in supporting safety and security at the Port Authority. Mr. Jennings, our Chief Safety Officer, along with Chief Porter, will be giving the presentation. So I'll cede the floor to you guys. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, and board members. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on the importance of CCTV cameras and video that we use, we currently use in all of our safety and security operations. As you can see from the slide there, the video is utilized mostly for post-incident investigations, for crimes against persons, crimes against property. We use it for crash investigations, and we use it for post-criminal investigations as well. The video surveillance is vital to our role in what we do on a day-to-day basis, especially on our buses, which is the last procurement was for the cameras on the buses, as well as the video surveillance within in and around the Port Authority system as a whole, at all of our high rail platforms and all of our subway platforms downtown. Over the years, we've received a number of transit security grants through FEMA that we have utilized in upgrading and maintaining our CCTV and video capabilities. It really is a vital stream of grant funding for our video and video surveillance that we utilize on a yearly basis. Turn it over to Bart. Thank you, Chief.
Good morning, Madam Chair and other board committee members. It's a pleasure to just talk a little bit with you today as the chief began with the importance of our video systems here at Port Authority. Going beyond the security and police use, system safety also uses these systems and relies on them for accident investigations. And in many cases, we are assisting the police, and in some cases, we're doing our own investigation. An example of that is on the rail system. Cameras on board the trains and at stations and so forth are extremely useful in safety work as well as police and security. Hazard investigation is another one. With the more new method of safety called safety management systems, we have a new category called near misses. So when near misses are reported to us, we can actually use video systems to go back and try to look at these near misses and determine what happened. And those are things where someone had the potential of being injured, or we had the potential of property damage, but an incident didn't actually occur, but it was a close call or a near miss. So the systems are important for that work too. And we also have rules compliance checks that we could do. And these again would be in response to reported issues, not just random looking at what people are doing, but in response to reports of things going on in the system that might not be safe. So then we could review past video and as well as send a safety officer out to a site to observe operations. That's the other method we use. But the importance is very, very big for safety as well as police. Some other very, very important video uses onto the next slide. Claims investigations. There are, claims filed against Port Authority every day. And the claims department investigates those things. And the video is a very, very important use. I think probably 98% of the time, it finds Port Authority to be not at fault and helps us really preserve our funding for things it's needed for and not paying out illegitimate claims. Workers' comp investigations, same thing. We can look at reported incidents and see what happened. If there is a hazard present on our property that we can fix, then we can go out, report it to the property department and fix it. And finally, upkeep and maintenance of these systems is very, very important. And we have a recent example in the news in New York City, the terrible crime that was committed up there in the subway system. They found that the cameras at that station were not working properly. So it's very important to maintain a strong stream of funding for monitoring the system and maintaining it and upgrading it periodically. So this is a very, very important piece. And I'd like to really thank the senior staff, the board, Jeffrey Devlin's IT department. Everybody really is working together, I feel, very well in providing the support needed for these systems. And we continue to apply for the transit security grants, as the chief indicated, and we can get some funding through that system as well to help us. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to take them. If not, thank you so much. No questions heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a very good presentation, and it was very
John.
well timed, I think, with, just the awarding of the video cameras and just tying in what the use of some of that use is into how our police and safety team use them. So I do appreciate the effort that went in today from our staff.
Hey, Jennifer.
If there are any questions, please, they can be asked now from board members.
Hey, Jennifer, it's John. I had a question, Bert, but it seems like we have sufficient funding for the work we're doing with the cameras. Is that right?
It would seem that based upon what was presented, yes, but go ahead.
Thank you, John, for the question. Yes, I think our funding is good, but there is always more that we could do. And anytime we can secure grant funding to help augment Port Authority's other funding streams, I think it's a benefit to the authority. But I do feel the support from Catherine and the staff and the board is good for police and safety. And I really appreciate everything you've done over the past few years to continue to fund us.
Thanks.
Thank you very
Bert.
much.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much. We all know IT people love money, and as much as they can get, they will spend.
Madam Committee Chairwoman, if I could just add to the chief at Bert's points about the transit security grants. At the end of this month, we're actually going to be conducting a 2-day hazard assessment. It's a new program being launched by the Transit Security Administration, and through doing that, it will help in the future moving forward we believe with our competitiveness, our further competitiveness with the transit security grants, which are typically discretionary. So just wanted to mention that briefly. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. So if there are no other questions, if there are, you can ask them now, board members. John, do you have another one? Or are you good?
Oh, no, I'm good. I just wanted to make sure Bert was satisfied with the funding, and he seems like he is. So that's the main thing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, I'd like to thank all members for participating and all members of the public for also watching our meeting today. With that, I will adjourn the committee meeting for technology and the committee meetings for today. So thank you very much to everyone and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.